I want you to understand something before I tell you this story. I am not a superstitious person. I've never believed in haunted houses or cursed objects or things that walk at night when the rest of the world is sleeping. I've always been the person at the table who finds a rational explanation, who rolls their eyes at the ghost hunting shows, who says coincidence when everyone else says sign. I need you to know that about me, because what I'm about to tell you, what happened in Black Hollow over those 6 days in November, has no rational explanation. I've looked for one every single day since I left, and every day I come back to the same wall. There is no explanation for what I heard on that recording. My name is Daniel Voss. In November of last year, I was a freelance journalist, 31 years old, recently out of a 4-year relationship, living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Asheville, North Carolina that smelled faintly of the previous tenant cigarettes no matter how many candles I burned. I wasn't doing well, if I'm honest. The kind of not doing well you don't notice at first because you're too busy filling time. Podcasts while cooking, music while driving, a television on in the background just to hear a human voice. The silence had become something I actively avoided. I tell you this because it matters later. The silence in Black Hollow was different from any silence I had ever tried to avoid. The assignment came from a mid-sized magazine based in Raleigh. They ran long-form features, true crime, regional history, that kind of thing. The editor, a woman named Carla Marsh, sent me a brief that was 3 paragraphs long and ended with a sentence I've thought about almost every day since. "This one might be nothing," she wrote, "but every person we've spoken to goes quiet when we bring it up. That alone seems worth the drive." The story was about a town called Black Hollow, in the western mountains of North Carolina, roughly 2 hours south of Asheville. Population, according to the last census that included it, was 214. The town had been largely depopulated through the 1990s as the timber industry collapsed, and by the early 2000s most of what remained was elderly residents who'd refused to leave and a handful of families who'd stayed out of stubbornness or poverty or both. What Carla wanted me to investigate was a series of audio recordings that had surfaced online the previous spring, 6 in total, uploaded to a now-deleted account on a file-sharing platform. Someone had found them and posted them to a regional history forum before the originals disappeared. The recordings were dated November 2003. They appeared to be field recordings made by a researcher named Marion Elbe, a folklorist from Western Carolina University who had traveled to Black Hollow to document oral histories from the remaining residents. Marion Elbe had never returned from that trip. Her disappearance had been investigated and officially closed as a voluntary departure. She'd had a history of depression, left no note, had recently ended a long relationship. The university had cleared her office. Her family had accepted the conclusion with what the police report described as resigned agreement. But the recordings didn't fit that story. I drove to Black Hollow on a Monday morning in early November, which meant I arrived in a town that had been dead for 20 years wearing November the way only mountain towns do. Gray sky pressing down on the tree line, cold that had teeth, leaves that had all fallen weeks ago and now lay in wet black sheets across every surface. I had my recorder, my laptop, a week's worth of clothes, and copies of all 6 of Marion Elbe's recordings saved locally on my phone. I'd listened to them once each on the drive down. I parked in front of what had been the town's general store, which was now shuttered, and sat for a moment with the engine running. I listened to the first recording again. Marion's voice was calm and precise in the way academics often are when recording, conscious of being recorded, enunciating slightly more than in conversation. She identified herself, the date, November 4th, 2003, and her location, Black Hollow, North Carolina. A preliminary reconnaissance before formal interviews began the following day. The town is smaller than I expected from the census data, she said. Many of the structures appear to have been abandoned in the mid to late 90s. I've counted roughly 30 occupied residences, possibly fewer. The community center on Mill Road appears to still be in use. There were lights inside when I passed. She described the drive-in, the topography, the condition of the roads, standard field notes. Then, at the 5-minute mark, she paused. "Something strange," she said quietly, as though she'd lowered her voice without meaning to. "I've passed 4 different houses now where the residents came to the window when they heard my car. Not curious, not friendly, just watching. Same posture, standing very still. I don't know why I'm noting this. It's probably nothing." Static. The recording ended. I should have found a motel in the nearest actual town, which was a place called Dalton, 40 minutes east. Instead, I'd arranged to rent a room from a man named Gerald Pate, who was 73 years old and one of the 12 or so permanent residents remaining in Black Hollow. Carla had connected us through a local historical society contact. Gerald was the closest thing the town had to an unofficial historian, and his house, a 2-story clapboard on the edge of what had been the main street, had a spare room he'd rented to hunters and hikers in summers past. He met me at the door with the particular warmth of someone who had been very alone for a very long time. "You're the writer," he said. "I am. You're here about Marion." He didn't say it as a question. He was a large man, broad-shouldered even in age, with hands that looked like they'd been carved rather than grown. He had pale eyes and the deliberate movements of someone who had learned to be careful with his body. We sat in his kitchen and he made coffee that was strong enough to narrate its own flavor, and he looked at me across the table with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I want to tell you something before you start," he said. "Not to scare you off, just so you know what you're walking into. Okay. Marion came here to document this town. The stories. The old ways. The things people used to do here." He wrapped both hands around his mug. "But some things aren't meant to be documented. And I think she learned that. Too late, maybe, but she learned it." "Do you think she left voluntarily?" He was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the wind moved through something. Branches, probably, but the sound was oddly rhythmic. "I think she's gone," he said finally. "And I think the difference between left and was taken stopped mattering to her somewhere around the 3rd night. I slept badly that first night. The room was cold in the way old houses are cold, not from lack of heat but from the accumulated chill of the wood itself, decades of winters absorbed into the walls. I lay in the dark listening to Gerald move around downstairs, which continued far longer than seemed natural. At some point after 2 a.m., the movement stopped. What replaced it was silence. Not the silence I was used to in the city, that layered ambient hum of distant traffic and vac systems and the faint collective noise of thousands of lives proceeding. This was absence, complete and total, as though someone had placed a glass dome over the town and pumped the sound out. I put my earbuds in and listened to the second recording. Marion had begun her interviews on November 5th. The recording opened with her speaking to an elderly woman whose name she gave only as Ruth. The conversation was ordinary at first, Ruth describing her childhood in the town, the timber operations, the school that had closed in 1988. Marion was a skilled interviewer, gently redirective, good at silence. Then Ruth said something that made me sit up in the dark. "You shouldn't be recording things here, hon." "Oh, I'm sorry. Does that bother you? I can turn it off." "It's not about me." Ruth's voice was paper-thin but precise. "It's about what picks up. You record in this town long enough. You get things on tape that you didn't mean to get. What sort of things? A pause. Long enough that I thought the recording had cut. Things that were asked to be forgotten. Ruth said finally. Things that don't like being remembered. Marion moved on. She was professional, but I noticed that she didn't push Ruth on it, and she didn't circle back. Like part of her had decided not to pull that thread. Day 2. I spent knocking on doors. Most went unanswered, though I could sometimes see movement behind curtains. Of the 6 residents who did speak to me, 4 immediately closed up when I mentioned Marion Elbe's name. 2 of the mid-sentence, shutting down with the abruptness of a flipped switch. One man, 50s, lived at the end of a date road, wouldn't give me his name, told me through a barely cracked door that I should leave before Thursday. Why Thursday? I asked. He looked at me for a moment with something that might have been pity. That's when she made the mistake, he said. And things around here have a long memory. He closed the door. That evening, Gerald and I sat by his fireplace, and I asked him directly what had happened to Marion. He stared at the fire for a long time. You have all 6 recordings? He asked. Yes. Have you listened to the last one? I had, once, in the car. It was the shortest, barely 2 minutes. Marion's voice was different in it. The precision was gone. She sounded like someone navigating a very dark room by memory. I'd made a note to re-listen more carefully. Play it again, Gerald said. After you've listened to the 5th one. The order matters. The 5th recording was the one that broke something open. Marion had been in the town for 4 days. Her voice in the early recordings had been measured, professional. By recording 5, dated November 7th, something had shifted in a way that was difficult to name but impossible to ignore. She sounded smaller, somehow, like she'd been compressed. She described what had happened on the 3rd night. I was reviewing my recordings from the day before, she said. Standard practice. I use noise cancellation software, which strips out background hiss. When I stripped it this time, I found something underneath. Behind my interview with Ruth. Behind my conversation with the man on Cutler Road. In the dead air between sentences. Her voice dropped. It's a voice. Not mine. Not theirs. I've listened to it 40 times in the last 6 hours. It's the same phrase, repeated. Low enough that the noise floor masked it completely during recording. It's only audible when you strip everything else away. I haven't been able to identify whose voice it is. I don't recognize it. But I know. I can't explain how I know. But I know that it was not in that room when I was recording. There was no one else there. Static. Then Marion played the clip. It was processed audio, tinny and artifact heavy from the noise removal. But the voice was there. A low murmur, cycling beneath the conversation like a tide. I turned my phone volume to maximum and pressed it against my ear. The phrase it was repeating. I had to listen 4 more times to be certain. Don't play it back. Don't play it back. Don't play it back. My hands were cold. I was sitting in Gerald's living room with the fire still going, and my hands were cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. Gerald was watching me from his chair. You heard it, he said. What is it? Marion asked the same thing. Spent her last full day trying to find out. He paused. She found something. An old story. Goes back to the founding of this town, 1887. Something happened in the hollow. The actual hollow. The lowland north of town where the creek runs. The original settlers did something there. Something they didn't write down. Something they told their children never to speak of. What did they do? Gerald shook his head. Not like he didn't know. Like he wouldn't say it in a room where the night could hear him. The story goes, he said quietly, that whatever they did, they disturbed something that was already here. already in the land. And to keep it from spreading, the deal was that it stayed in the hollow and they stayed out of the hollow. And more than that, they agreed to never record it, never document it, never do anything that would carry it beyond the place where they'd contained it. He looked at me steadily. Sound travels, Daniel, and it carries things. That's the belief. That's what every person in this town has known since childhood. You document something from Black Hollow, and you don't just capture the story. You capture everything that lives in the same air as the story. I thought about what he was saying. I'm a journalist. Rational. Skeptical. I thought about the voice underneath the recording. Don't play it back. Marion found this story, I said. She did. And she still had 4 recordings active. Her field recorder, her phone, a backup device she kept running in her bag. She'd been recording constantly for 4 days. He paused. I think she understood what that meant. I think she understood what she'd been carrying out of town every time she went back to her motel room. What she'd been spreading. What happened on the last night? Gerald didn't answer. He just looked at the fire. Listen to the 6th recording, he said. Then come find me. I went to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hands for a long time before I pressed play. Marion's voice, when it came, was barely a voice at all. It was a person trying to hold themselves together with the only tool they had left, the act of narration, of documenting. The terrible irony of that. It's after midnight, she said. I'm in my car. I've been driving in circles because I don't want to stop moving. I turned off all my recording devices 3 hours ago. All of them. This is the last one. I need to say this once and then I need to turn it off and I need to never play it back. A sound in the background. Wind, maybe. Or breath. Low and rhythmic. I went to the hollow today. I know I wasn't supposed to. But I'm a researcher and I thought I could document it. I thought I could understand it and document it and that would be enough. That's what I always think. That understanding something is the same as having power over it. Her voice broke slightly. She steadied it. There's something down there. In the hollow. I heard it moving in the trees. I didn't see it but I heard it and I kept recording. God help me. I kept recording because I couldn't stop. That's what it does, I think. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't have to. It just makes you keep reaching for the thing that's bringing it closer. It makes you keep the recorder running. The rhythmic sound in the background was getting louder. I've listened to my recordings. All of them. When I strip the noise, it's on every single one. Not just Ruth's. Every interview. Every field note. It's been there since the first day. Which means I've been carrying it since the first day. I've been playing it back and with every playback. She stopped. 22 seconds of silence. Then, very quietly, there's someone outside the car. Silence. There's no one in this parking lot. There was no one in this parking lot. But there's someone outside the car and they're not. They don't. Her breath went ragged. If someone finds this, don't play it back. Please don't play it back. The voice on the recording is a warning, not a threat. It's telling you the same thing I'm telling you now. Every time you play it, it gets. The recording ended. I sat in the dark with my phone in my hand. I want to be precise about what happened next because I've gone over it 1,000 times looking for the rational version. The version where I imagined it or misheard it or where the explanation is something embarrassingly simple. In the silence of Gerald's spare room, in the complete absence of sound that Black Hollow wraps around itself at night, I heard something. It was low, rhythmic, coming from everywhere and nowhere, the way a sound does when it's inside the walls or inside your own blood. It was a voice. It was saying my name. I was out of that room in 4 seconds. I hit the hallway, then the stairs, taking them too fast in the dark and catching the banister hard enough to leave a bruise I can still press if I need to remind myself it was real. Gerald was at the bottom of the stairs, awake, dressed, like he'd been waiting. "You heard it," he said. "How is it?" My voice didn't work properly. I tried again. "How is it saying my name?" It didn't know my name when Marion. "It knows now," Gerald said. "You played her recordings. All 6. You played them back." The fire had burned down to coals. The room was very dark. Outside, the wind through the hollow made a sound that wasn't quite wind. "I need to leave," I said. "Yes," Gerald said simply. "You do." I drove through the night. I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't play music. I sat in total silence for 2 hours, and I kept my hands on the wheel and my eyes on the road, and I didn't look at anything I didn't have to look at. I was an hour from Asheville when my phone lit up on the passenger seat. A notification from my recorder app, the one I kept running in my bag on habit, the way Marion had. It had captured audio. 6 hours of it. I pulled over on the side of the highway and sat for a long time with the dome light on and my phone face down on the seat beside me. I never opened the file. I deleted the app and I wiped the phone and I drove home and I threw the recorder in a dumpster 3 blocks from my apartment. But here's the thing that I keep coming back to. The thing that lives between my ribs and won't leave. Before I deleted the app, I saw the waveform. Just a visual display. No audio. 6 hours of my field recorder running in my bag while I drove through Black Hollow. While I sat in Gerald's living room. While I listened to Marion's recordings in the dark. For the first 5.5 hours, the waveform was flat. Silence. For the last 30 minutes, the drive out, the highway, the moment I pulled over, it was active. Something had been talking. And if you're watching this video right now, I need you to understand something. I documented this story. I narrated it. You listened. Which means you've been inside Black Hollow with me for the last 20 minutes. And I need you to ask yourself something, in whatever silence you're sitting in right now. Can you hear it? That low sound. Under everything. Cycling slowly like a tide. Don't play it back. Don't play it back. Don't play it back. I know. I know it's too late. It was too late for Marion. It was too late for me. But for what it's worth, and God, I hope it's worth something, I want you to know what I know now. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't have to. It just waits to be heard. Marion Elbe has never been found. Her case remains officially closed. Gerald Pate did not answer his phone when I called the following week. The number has since been disconnected.